In 2001, explorers confirmed something impossible lying nearly 3 kilometers beneath the Denmark Strait. The wreckage of HMS Hood, once the fastest and most powerful battlecruiser in the world, rests where she vanished 60 years earlier. But here is what makes this discovery critical. Hood did not sink slowly. She disappeared in approximately 3 minutes, taking 1,415 men with her and leaving only 3 survivors. What could destroy a 42,000-ton warship that quickly? And what does the wreck itself prove about how it happened? The forensic evidence on the seabed answers both questions and changes what we thought we knew about her final moments. Discovery: the wreck lies scattered across the seabed in the Denmark Strait region, roughly where Royal Navy records placed her last known position. A joint British-American expedition using advanced sonar technology located the site and confirmed the identity through distinctive features visible even under nearly 3 kilometers of water. For families who lost fathers, brothers, and sons that day in May 1941, the discovery brought closure after 6 decades of uncertainty about where their loved ones rested. But the wreck offered something more than location. The way Hood broke apart, the distribution of her debris, and the condition of identifiable sections told a story that survivors could only guess at from their brief, chaotic moments in the water. One particular feature captured in side-scan sonar immediately drew attention from naval architects and forensic investigators: sheer violence of the breakup pattern. This was not a ship that flooded compartment by compartment. Something catastrophic had torn her apart from within. Admiral-class HMS Hood was launched in 1918 and commissioned in 1920. She displaced approximately 42,100 tons at deep load and measured 262 meters in length, roughly 860 feet from bow to stern. 4 propeller shafts driven by approximately 144,000 shaft horsepower pushed her to a maximum speed of 31 to 32 knots, making her one of the fastest capital ships afloat. Her main battery consisted of 8 15-inch guns in 4 twin turrets, capable of hurling 1,920-pound shells across vast distances. To the British public and much of the world, she was simply the mighty Hood, the largest warship in the Royal Navy and a symbol of British naval supremacy between the wars. She represented power, prestige, and the enduring reach of the fleet. But beneath that reputation lay a design compromise that would prove fatal. Battlecruisers embodied a specific naval philosophy: combine the hitting power of a battleship with the speed of a cruiser by sacrificing some armor protection. Hood could outrun anything she couldn't outgun, and outgun anything that could catch her. Each of her 15-inch shells weighed as much as a small car and could penetrate heavy armor at ranges exceeding 20 kilometers. In a surface engagement, she could dictate the terms of battle, closing or opening the distance. But that speed came at a cost. Hood's deck armor was relatively thin compared to her vertical belt armor. At long ranges, shells followed a high, arcing trajectory, plunging downward onto the deck. Against modern battleship guns at Denmark Strait distances, Hood's deck protection was a critical vulnerability. Throughout the interwar years and into World War II, Hood served as a flagship and the embodiment of British sea power. She conducted goodwill cruises, showed the flag in distant ports, and maintained Atlantic patrol duties as war threatened and then erupted. By May 1941, her mission had become urgent. German surface raiders were breaking out into the Atlantic shipping lanes, threatening the convoy lifeline between Britain and North America. When intelligence confirmed that the new German battleship Bismarck and the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen had left Norwegian waters, Hood sailed with the battleship Prince of Wales to intercept them in the Denmark Strait between Iceland and Greenland. The engagement began on May 24, 1941, at a range of roughly 25,000 yards, about 23 kilometers. Both British ships opened fire on the German squadron. Initially, Hood engaged Prince Eugen, mistaking her for Bismarck in the early morning light, before shifting fire to the correct target. The German ships returned fire with devastating accuracy. Within minutes, Bismarck's fifth salvo achieved what naval planners had feared but rarely witnessed: a plunging hit near Hood's mainmast in the vulnerable areas above or adjacent to her after magazines. Survivors reported seeing a large explosion and fire, followed almost immediately by a catastrophic detonation that broke the ship's back. The massive explosion threw debris hundreds of feet into the air as Hood's structure failed along her midship section. From the first salvo to her disappearance beneath the surface took approximately 3 minutes, around 180 seconds from fighting ship to gone. The bow section rose briefly before sliding under. The stern followed moments later. There was no time for organized evacuation, no opportunity for most of the crew to reach the upper decks. In those 3 minutes, 1,415 men went down with their ship. 3 men survived. Midshipman Ted Briggs, able seaman Bob Tilburn, and ordinary signalman Bill Dundas were blown clear or managed to swim away from the suction as Hood went down. They found themselves in frigid water, coated in fuel oil, struggling against the North Atlantic cold. Briggs had been on the compass platform, Tilburn in a secondary position, Dundas near the aft section. Their exact escape paths remained somewhat unclear. Each man experienced case and instinct rather than conscious navigation through the sinking. The destroyer HMS Electra picked them up after they had spent time in the water that felt like eternity, but measured in minutes critical for survival. Out of a crew of approximately 1,418 men, only these 3 lived. The mathematics of that loss, 1,415 dead, represent one of the Royal Navy's worst single-ship disasters. For decades afterward, families sought answers about what had happened so quickly that afternoon, why their loved ones had no chance to escape, and where exactly the ship had come to rest. The discovery of the wreck in 2001 gave those families a place to mourn, and investigators the evidence to understand what the 3 survivors could never fully explain from their brief, traumatic perspective. Finding Hood required sophisticated technology and careful methodology. Side-scan sonar creates acoustic images of the seabed by sending sound pulses and measuring their return, essentially painting a picture of objects and terrain below. Search teams worked over the suspected area, guided by historical position records from Prince of Wales and other ships present during the battle. Autonomous underwater vehicles and remotely operated vehicles eventually confirmed what sonar had suggested. A massive debris field centered on 2 large hull sections, separated by a gap where the ship's midships had been. The wreck lay from 2,700 to 2,800 meters depth, far beyond the reach of divers, but accessible to remotely operated vehicle systems. In 2001, after comparing distinctive features against Hood's construction plans, investigators achieved positive identification. After 60 years, the wreck had been found. Mighty Hood had been found. If you want more evidence-driven wreck stories like this, subscribing helps us devote the time to verify sources and preserve these histories. The wreck itself tells a story written in torn steel and scattered debris. 6 key forensic features provide compelling evidence about what destroyed Hood. First, the separation pattern. The bow and stern sections rest far apart, with the midships area essentially obliterated. This indicates a single catastrophic event rather than progressive flooding or multiple smaller explosions over time. Second, hull plating near the magazine areas shows outward peeled deformation, metal bent away from the interior. This is the signature of an internal explosion, where pressure seeks the path of least resistance through weaker structural points. External weapons impacts create inward deformation. Magazine detonations push outward. Third, the debris field radius and density match high-energy internal events. Components from deep within the ship, machinery, fittings, structural elements, lie scattered across a wide area, consistent with explosive forces flinging them outward during breakup. Fourth, turret remains show positions consistent with ejection during violent hull breakup, supporting catastrophic center section destruction. Fifth, keel and longitudinal structural deformation prove this was not progressive flooding. The ship broke in a way that indicates sudden, overwhelming forces from within. Sixth, identifiable superstructure and island fittings provide positive identification and show that even violent destruction leaves recognizable features for forensic analysis. Taken together, these 6 features strongly support the conclusion that Hood suffered a magazine detonation triggered by a plunging shell, likely from Bismarck, that penetrated her deck armor and ignited propellant charges. The resulting explosion broke her back and sent her to the bottom in roughly 3 minutes. Hood's loss exposed the fundamental trade-off in battlecruiser design. To beat an offensive power had been purchased at the cost of protection against modern long-range gunnery. In North Atlantic conditions, where engagement ranges could stretch to the limits of optical fire control, deck armor mattered as much as belt armor. The lesson was clear, brutal, and written in the loss of 1,415 lives. The strategic impact rippled through the Royal Navy immediately. The shock of losing Hood galvanized British determination to hunt down Bismarck, leading to the massive pursuit that ended with the German battleship's destruction 3 days later. Naval architects studying Hood's loss influenced armor schemes for ships under construction and reinforced existing vessels where possible. The battlecruiser concept itself was already fading, but Hood's fate accelerated its obsolescence. HMS Hood is a designated WWII grave under United Kingdom protection, prohibiting salvage and requiring respectful treatment of the site. The wreck is not an archaeological curiosity, but a tomb for 1,415 sailors who died serving their country. Families, historians, and naval authorities have worked to ensure that investigation serves education and remembrance, while honoring those who rest there. The crew of HMS Hood sailed into battle knowing the risks, but trusting their ship and each other. They deserve to be remembered not just as casualties of a design flaw, but as sailors who served aboard one of history's most famous warships. The wreck tells their story and stands as their memorial beneath the Denmark Strait. The hunt for Bismarck that followed Hood's destruction involved multiple naval forces and ended with another wreck on the Atlantic floor. But what that wreck reveals about the damage Bismarck sustained challenges some long-held assumptions. That's a story worth exploring next.